Gentlemen, welcome to the video, welcome to the new studio, and welcome to the new arrow building station. And in today's video, we're going to be doing just that. We'll be building my hunting arrows for 2026. So in this video, I'm going to be starting with bare shafts fresh out of the box and moving through every step necessary to build them out into fully fledged, effective hunting arrows. First and foremost, as far as the build goes, we're going to be using the Easton 5.0 shafts in a 300 spine. I'm shooting 28 inches of draw at 72 pounds with about a 27.5 inch carbon to carbon arrow. So as we move through this video, I'm going to talk about every component that makes these arrows what they are and why I've chosen them for my needs. And I'm also going to compare them to my past arrow builds, which again, were very, very good, but I think I can make them just a little bit better. So the very first step is to hop to the arrow saw and get these cut down to an appropriate length. So step number one, cut the arrow shafts. I already know my arrow shaft length from a past arrow, which I am using for reference. Let me grab it real quick. My old Easton 5 mils. So these are already set up for my personal saw, but this is the mod saw. Now, Mod Saw is not an affiliate of the channel in any way, shape, or form, but this is kind of the Cadillac of an arrow saw in a lot of ways. It's got your standard measurement device here to lay an arrow into the saw itself, and it actually indexes off the throat of the nock instead of carbon, which I kind of like. And then you can lay this down into the blade as it spins to make your cut. Once it's spun and cut in that way, you can come over here and not only can you spin test on these rollers, but you can also push that arrow shaft up against a sanding plate to make sure that your arrow is square before you install your inserts, because if that carbon is not square up the top here and it's got a little bit of cant to it, well, your insert's also going to have a little bit of cant to it, which is going to lead to spiraling on your field point. I'm exaggerating to show the camera, but that can be an issue, especially with your broadhead flight. So let's get this guy set up and make our first cut. Okay, so at 27.5 inches, I find my appropriate cut length for my arrow builds, and I can go ahead and index the nock here into this point and lay it against that blade. Now, it's very important that when you do this, you don't just shove the arrow shaft through the blade and make a bad cut. That'll lead to tear out. These carbon fibers in here are very prone to kind of wisping out into frays and giving you uneven cuts. So in order to work against that, you'll take the arrow shaft like so, say I was making a cut here, and I'll kind of feather it towards the blade while spinning the shaft to make sure that that cut is clean. So let's go ahead and make a cut here. Once that cut is complete, you might notice that there's some slight imperfections on the inside of this shaft. That is what this squaring tool is for. So we can set it on these two rollers right here, press it firmly against that sanding disc, and just rotate it a few times. And then you'll find that you've got a very square end on that arrow shaft, which is going to be a great mounting surface for inserts and field points. Okay, so now here we sit with a dozen equal length and equal weight squared up shafts that are ready for inserts. Now I do something a little different than a lot of people on my inserts. I do not use like an archery specific adhesive. I use this IC2000 from Bob Smith Industries. It's kind of a crafter's glue. It is a CA glue, but this one is rubber strengthened. So the reason that I like the rubber strengthened version is, let me grab an arrow. These are the inserts that we will be using, but if you imagine where an arrow is taking the brunt of its impacts, it's going to be out at the insert in the field point or broadhead, whatever you happen to be using. So using something that's a little bit more shock absorbent than opposed to something like a Fletching glue, which is also a CA glue, but not hardened by that rubberization or that carbon process. This is going to crack. It's going to be more brittle. It's going to be very strong, just like this rubberized glue, but it is going to be more brittle. Now we're going to need a little bit of isopropyl alcohol for this portion of the job. This attention to detail on jobs like this are very important because we don't want to glue onto loose carbon sort of fuzz or shavings from that cutting process. So I'll take a Q-tip. Some people take like a 22 caliber bore brush from a rifle cleaning kit. I just do it with a Q-tip and I run it right down through the neck of that, and you'll see how much kind of grime and crud you get on there. That's cleaning out that excess carbon from the cut that we made earlier. And then I'll go through and I'll do this for each and every shaft. So this is ready for an insert to be inserted. Okay, now these are the inserts that these arrows come with. These are an Easton product. They're an 8x32 half out. So to install, it is about as easy as you probably think it is. Snip the tip. This is a little knife by SRM they sent over to the channel for my testing. It's kind of like a Skinner profile on it. Pretty decent steel, I'm a fan. But we'll just nip off the end of this glue. Nice knife, not the best sheath. And I kind of just give it 1, 2, 3 stripes. Like so, you can see there. And then I'll take the cleaned shaft, and as I am installing, I'll give it some rotation to make sure that glue is nicely spread out. Be ready with a paper towel at the end to wipe away the excess, that little band of excess there, as you can see. And there you have the insert installed. So I'm just gonna go through this process this many more times. Okay, now we move on to the fun part, which is fletching. This is a Bitzenburger fletching jig, the one and only true classic way to fletch your arrows. There are new fashioned ways, there are faster ways, there are arguably more time efficient ways, but this is the most versatile tool for the job. I have a right helical clamp with me here today, and this is going to be set to a 3-degree offset. This is not necessarily a video about how to use a Bitzenburger jig, but I will give you a quick rundown. This is your clamp. It holds your vane in place. Speaking of vanes, we'll be using the Boning X3s, specifically in a 3-inch length, as you can see here. Now the reason I like the Boning X3s is, number one, they're factory primed, so I don't need a priming pen to make these work. And number two, they are a fairly rigid material, which means that that vane kind of flaps less on the arrow shaft, which makes them a tad bit quieter. With these components chosen, you can select how many vanes you want to put onto your arrow shaft using this selection right here. All you have to do is loosen these little Allen keys and then select an angle. For our case, we're going to be using the 120 setting up top. If you want 4-fletch, you switch it to 90. If you want that weird sort of X-fletch version as well, you can switch it to that 3rd setting. Now, as far as helical goes, that's where these two sort of cogs come into play. We are going to be doing a 3-degree right helical, which looks like this on the settings. So if this line of this cog here was lined up with this 0-degree line here, we would be doing a straight fletch. And the same thing goes for the bottom one. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm not an expert on teaching people how to use Bitzenburgers, but that's how I use this one. So same thing again with our isopropyl alcohol. We'll go ahead and grab a Q-tip from my infinite bag of Q-tips, saturate that, and just run this along the bottom of your vane. We'll go ahead and load it into the clamp, and I typically run it all the way to the rear, like so. And then I'm going to lay a very thin bead of glue. You don't want to overglue, but you don't want to underglue either. It's kind of a guessing game until you understand how your actual glue moves. For this fletch fuse, it doesn't take all that much. I'll just go ahead and run a quick bead of fletch fuse here. And again, no real need to use a brand name glue. You can also get, for a little bit cheaper of a price, this stuff right here, which is just another CA glue in a medium viscosity, which is, dirty little industry secret, all that this is. It's their, I mean, it's the same picture. So then we'll set our Bitzenburger clamp into the jig like so on that magnet and lower it down to the arrow shaft. Make good contact. A little bit of squeeze out is totally fine. I actually prefer a little bit of squeeze out to show me that I had enough glue versus too little squeeze out where I'm wondering if I added enough. And I'm just giving this a light squeeze on the top to make sure that we've got good seating. You don't want to clamp on it, just give it a little bit of love right there. Take a clean Q-tip, pull away your excess, just like so. And I don't mind there being a little bit of glue in the arrow shaft. I don't lose my mind over that. If anything, a little bit of surface weld to hold the vane to the arrow shaft around this edge. It's just bonus. So we're gonna sit here for about 20 seconds until this glue sets, and then we'll pull the clamp off and inspect our work. Okay, that's been plenty of time. Go ahead and squeeze this clamp open, lift it up and away, like so. Now we can pull our arrow here and have a look. So, as you can see, nicely attached, no real issues there. I am going to take my Q-tip a second time through and just pull away any of that excess. Again, it doesn't bother me at all, but some people aren't going to want that excess glue building up. Put this back on to the jig, like so, in the position that we fletched it. Reach down, turn this knob 120 degrees, and repeat. Now, I mentioned earlier that I thought that I could improve upon my arrow design from years past. And what I meant by that was, I think that the numbers, meaning the arrow weight, the front of center percentage, all that stuff, and the speed that I can get out of my arrows could be more well balanced. I had about 14 to 15% FOC on my arrows in years past, and they were about 550 grains in weight, which is getting up there in weight. I actually just put them on the scale yesterday, and they were about 548 for each arrow. Now, out of a 72-pound bow with a pretty average draw length, that is not coming out slow, but it's not coming out all that quick either. And I feel like less drop between my pins is only going to leave me less room for error in the future. Wipe down that excess. And there you have it. A 3-fletch, 3-degree, right helical, Blazer 3-inch X3 vanes on an Easton 5.0 shaft. And then on the actual business end of the arrow, we're going to have a 125 grain tip, which gives me 175 grains out front to work with on a lighter shaft than the Easton 5 mils. Hopefully you found this helpful. You were able to learn something. If you were, jump down into the comments section and let me know right down below. Also, if you feel like liking the video, subscribing to the channel, please do so right down below. It's one of the best ways to support the channel so I can keep making stuff like this for you guys. Hopefully you're considering picking up the skill of being able to build and maintain your arrows on your own, because like I said in the beginning of the video, you're not always gonna have access to a bow shop when you're out on hunts or in hunting camp. It's best to have at least somebody in the group, that'd be me, that is able to work on your arrows for you. It's only going to benefit you and those that you hunt with. So thank you guys so much for watching as always, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.